Come on, break the rules. The time is right. The time's tonight. Let it start, and you won't stop. Let it start, and I won't stop. We'll never stop. Let it start, and we won't stop because this night belongs to us. We'll never stop because this night is just for us. We'll never.
KHJ Los Angeles.
Portions of the day's programming are reproduced by means of electrical transcriptions or tape recordings.
And there you have it, folks. We're back. Another wonderful Wednesday in this wacky world of professional and amateur sports. You're listening to 87 Live, the official radio program of 87sportsfans.com. And you're listening to it on 87 Sports Fans Radio. I am one of your illustrious hosts, Keith Grieve.
And I'm Steve Taylor. Hi, Keith.
Welcome back, Mr. Taylor.
We're here.
And boy, do we have a action-packed lineup
Oh, my
for
God.
you tonight. We're going to get into Alabama Saban, that whole mess. I'm sorry, I meant Alabama Saban, Texas, that whole mess.
Sounds like a good team name. Alabama Sabans.
Alabama Sabans.
Really, that should change the name to that anyways.
Just as long as you don't say Sibian.
Sibian.
Cutler, McCown. We'll get into that whole mess. RG3, the Redskins mess. Are you sensing a trend here? There's a lot of messes to talk about. Also,
I don't think the Bears one's as much of a mess, but we'll wait till we get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that. And then at the top of the hour, Jim Saranteas from thefantasygreek.com will join us as always, but we have a very special guest, Claire Mullins from NFLfemale.com, who is the official Houston Texans fan reporter, will be joining us to talk what happened to create the Texans mess, keeping with the theme of the show. A reminder that this and every broadcast is brought to you by CG Imaging. That's cg-imaging.com. CG Imaging, virtually creating reality. And if you want to take part in the broadcast, folks, there are multiple ways for you to do it. You can call in at 585-633-7487. That number is 585-633-7487. And even if you are listening to this broadcast on demand afterwards through the website, through Spreaker.com, through iTunes, wherever you may be hearing this, if you want to call and leave a voicemail, we will get that on the air in a future episode. Guaranteed. That number again, 585-633-7487. You can also email us at youguysuck@87sportsfans.com, and our Twitter handle is at 87sportsfans, or facebook.com/87sportsfans. Whew.
That was a lot.
That spiel. I get better and better at doing it with one breath.
You do.
Practice makes progress, I guess.
Oh, goddamn.
Anyway, so I hinted, as I just ran down, the first thing we want to talk about is the whole University of Alabama, Nick Saban, Texas thing, which, Mac Brown still hasn't officially resigned as of this broadcast.
Yeah, but a lot of people are saying that the reason he hasn't, he's been denying the whole resignation rumors is he wanted to be the first to tell his team that he was leaving. But of course, the media, somebody leaked it. Media always finds out. That's why when these sports figures or politicians or whatnot believe they can try to sneak some news out or to hide it from people, it'll never happen. Never, not in today's day and age.
Well, there's nothing more meaningless in sports than a long-term coaching contract, especially in college football. It's just a joke. What's his name? Oh, Brian Kelly last year. No, I don't want to go to Chip Kelly. I'm sorry, not Brian Kelly. Chip Kelly. No, I don't want to go to the NFL. I have no interest in the NFL. Oh, guess what? I'm head coach of the Eagles.
Yeah.
It just gets annoying after a while. So anyway, none of this official statements that be released should deter anybody from understanding that anything is still possible. So let's assume that Mac Brown does step down, as all the sources have indicated. And now Alabama has offered Nick Saban an extension. If you're Nick Saban, what would make you want to go to Texas?
Ego. Pure ego. Because, I mean, if the reports are true, the money he's being offered, which there is, the rumor going out there that it's a 10-year, $100 million contract. Alabama could give him that money too. Like, he can get the same money from Alabama that whatever money he's going to get from Texas, he can get from Alabama. But the only reason, in my opinion, that he would go to Texas is ego, because he would be the only college football coach in the history of forever who won a national championship with 3 different teams. I mean, that's it.
Well, okay, so again, I'm reading this off of ESPN.com. So Saban was extended in March, a raise and a contract extension through 2020.
What was her name?
Sorry. I get it.
Alabama joke, sorry.
Yeah. Through 2020, worth $5.62 million a year, and said it represented his intention to finish his career in Tuscaloosa. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so if you're going to get $10 million a year, and I saw today also that the rumors of 1% of the Longhorn Network, so its ownership, it's residual income after coaching is done. Saban has built programs wherever he's gone. He's been successful wherever he's gone. Michigan State, LSU, and now Alabama. I don't understand, unless it's really a passion. I mean, and I'm going to boil this down. I was thinking about this today. What could I align my argument with? What metaphor could I come up with to clearly articulate why I would totally understand why Nick Saban would want to move on to Texas? And it's got nothing to do with the quality of the job or the history of Texas or how much money there is to spend on football at the University of Texas. It's got nothing. In reality, it may have something to do with that, but my reasoning, my thinking, my metaphor that I'm going to use here has nothing to do with that. He really loves building these programs. If that's true or not, I have no idea. But I could see somebody like him that has the track record of turning these middle of the road programs into powerhouses. I could see him looking at a Texas who is middle of the road now and wanting to make that, to do there what he's done with Alabama, what he did at LSU. And it's the equivalent of, you and I are big fans of the college football game.
Yes.
Okay. You get your program up to a certain point, and I don't know about you, but I always want to go and I'll take over like University of Louisiana Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
Where you got no chance of winning anything that first year in the game. It's the same mentality. It's not that you get bored if you're Nick Saban, because there's still challenges. You're still playing top-notch college football. You're in the SEC. You have a lot of pressure to be in the hunt for a national championship every year. It's not that you get bored, but you get systems in place where things move kind of smoothly, and maybe it's a little easy, or at least easier than when you first got there. So looking at Texas and the chance to do it all again. And if he were to go to Texas and turn them into a perennial national powerhouse within 2 or 3 years, that just would cement his legacy even more.
Yeah, but see, and I can see what you're saying, but the thing you got to, in my opinion, if he went to Texas, won a couple championships, yeah, it'll cement his legacy as being one of the greatest coaches ever. But if he stays in Alabama for, say, like another 15 years, you gotta assume he's gonna win probably half a dozen championships in a 15-year period, which will put him in a godlike conversation. I mean, to win as many titles as he has the potential of winning with Alabama, I mean, to me that's more of a legacy than switching teams. I mean, because if he switches teams and still wins, there'll still be that part of his legacy that said, "Oh yeah, well he flips every other year. He flips and goes somewhere else." And it'll always. I mean, as of right now, he is still in my mind the guy that left Miami Dolphins high and dry. Mm-hmm. And if he left for Texas, that would only lower him in my opinion even more. But like right now, if he decides to stay and he retires at Alabama, I think that'll help his legacy as far as that is concerned. It'll show that he had the opportunity to go and to change and to do what he's done and to be Nick Saban, quotation marks, but he decided to stick with one team and stay it out. And I think that would, like I said, he'll win. He's going to win a few more national titles. And by staying, it'll help him get some of those skeletons out of the closet, I believe. So to me, and I agree with what you're saying. He might enjoy doing the whole video game thing, but when we're sitting on our asses on the couch in 20s and 30s, he's 62 when he has to go do it with a real team.
Right. I know it's not the perfect metaphor, but
yeah, I mean, it's 62. That to me is questioning why he would want to go, because right now, I mean, he can walk into any recruit's house and be like, "Hey, you want to come play for Alabama?" They're like, "Yeah, let's go." And he gets all. I mean, right now, all the best players go to Alabama, and you don't even have to look at national championships. You just have to look at how many players he puts into the NFL, and that's a reason why he gets all the best people. He goes to Texas, yeah, he's going to get really good. You know what I mean?
We don't have to sacrifice. We don't have to change our ways. Just keep rolling on and on. Sleep through days and days and days. We work all day and nothing gets done. We don't really care, just passing time. We pass the days, the months, the years. We cash our checks, we lose our souls, we hide our tears. My brain is getting numb, my heart is getting weak, my body's getting old. I'm having trouble speaking, and my eyes can't make believe that they still see. I point to all of this, I'm walking away, I'm leaving no regrets. The end begins today, because it's inconsequential life, it's killing me. It's killing me. Time keeps rolling like a snowball, faster and faster is getting numb, my heart is getting weak, my body's getting old, I'm having trouble speaking. And my eyes can't make believe that they still see. I point to all of this, I'm walking away, I'm leaving no regrets, the end begins today. Because this inconsequential life, it's killing me. It's killing me. Yeah, it's killing me. It's killing me.
The internet is killing me this evening, folks. Sorry about that little technical difficulty. Had a little unplanned break, and we cut off Steve's little Nick Saban.
Now you know what
soliloquy.
happens when Keith doesn't agree with what I'm saying.
That's
he just
right.
goes to a internet hiccup.
I've got this big flashing button that's underneath this like cake plate, and I just like take the lid off and just smash it and just shut him up.
God damn it.
All right.
Next to the ejection seat button, too.
So, all right, we've killed Nick Saban.
Nick Saban's dead.
We've killed the topic. So let's move
Honestly,
on.
I really don't care about him. So
Monday night, Chicago Bears, Dallas Cowboys. Really, only one team showed up.
oh God, Dallas's defense is so bad.
Yeah, it was just atrocious.
It's so bad. It's laughable.
And I'm a Bears fan. You're a Bears fan. I kept watching the Cowboys on offense, wondering why aren't they just running it every 2 out of every 3 downs? I just didn't understand that. But now it's created this kind of, we'll call it a controversy for the sake of this segment. What should the Bears do? Stick with Josh McCown or Jay Cutler if he's 100%? And before I give my take, I want to hear yours.
Honestly, and you know this. Monday night, I sent you a message saying McCown instead of Cutler ? And you said no. And I didn't really understand 100% why you would say that until I realized the fact that McCown is 34 years old. I believe if McCown was like 27, 28, we might be having a different conversation here. But in even listening to him when he was asked the question, do you think you're the starter? You can see that he completely understands what his role is. And I think a lot of it has to do with his age. I mean, he realizes, listen, he's having a great run right now. And hell, if he can extend his career 4 or 5 years as a backup for Chicago because of what he's doing now, I bet he's ecstatic about that because, backups, he could probably get $1-2 million a year just to be a backup, and live off of what's been going on. But for me, as soon as Cutler's back, 100%, he should get in and play just because he is the future where you really can't say that a guy who's 34 is going to be the future of your team. You just can't say that. He's playing amazing, and I give him all the credit in the world for the way he's handling this. I have not heard him once say, oh, well, whatever the coach's decision or whatnot. He has said nothing but, this is Jay's team. I'm just happy I can keep it afloat until he gets back, and he's completely on board with Jay Cutler being the guy. And the fact that he's so on board proves to me that Cutler is the guy. Because if there was any dissension or if there was any question on if Jay would be the guy, you would think the person that could take over for him and, at least for a couple seasons, boost his income double, triple, would be the first to speak up. So for me, I really think there's zero controversy. I think what you're seeing here is a phenomenal backup, a guy that's, not had the best luck throughout his career, but finally is grooving with this offense. A phenomenal backup, doing a great job, keeping the team afloat and making sure it is there for Jay when he's ready.
And I totally agree. But look, Josh McCown has been playing phenomenal ball, and I tweeted out a link to a piece by NFL Philosophy, which goes way in depth as you need to on this. Not overly in depth, but as in depth as you need to on this scenario. Jay Cutler physically, if you, and I wrote about this the other day in my blog post, if you're going to really look me in the eyes and tell me that you look at all the physical tools, you would take Josh McCown over Jay Cutler. And if you told me that you would take Josh McCown, I will punch you square in the mouth. I swear to God. Look, Alshon Jeffrey bailed McCown out on 2 major balls just in that game alone.
Yeah.
Okay, and the Cowboys' defense is atrocious. If it was any other defense, there's 2 interceptions that could have possibly turned the game. But Alshon Jeffrey just snagged the ball out of the defender's hand, basically. Okay? He throws a horrible deep ball. He's got all of these great numbers because he's not taking as many deep shots. And if you read that piece I tweeted, it shows the exact breakdown. He's not taking as many deep shots as Cutler. And so when you take those deep shots, your completion percentage suffers. Your interceptions go up naturally. Like, Cutler's a gunslinger. He makes some stupid throws. He does some stupid things from time to time. But the arm strength, his mobility is just as good as McCown's, and he's younger, like you said.
It's the age.
But McCown, on that catch, that amazing Alshon Jeffrey catch in the corner of the end zone, okay? McCown threw that ball, and if it had been a warm night, it would have come down with dew on it, okay? There was way too much air under that ball, and thank God Alshon Jeffrey was on the other end of that because that could have been a disaster.
Well, but to be honest, though, I mean, there was a lot of air on the ball, but the thing was in the very back corner of the end zone. So, I mean, there's not a lot of defensive players that would have made that catch.
Well, I'm not even talking about that. There was 2 other throws. One on the left sideline.
Oh, I got you.
That Jeffrey just snatched right out of the defender's hand. I think it was Brandon Carr. I could be wrong on that, though, on who the defender was. But, there's just... He can make the intermediate throws and the short throws. He cannot throw the deep ball. And if you're going to honestly try to decide who's going to be your quarterback starting the season, you don't want to go into a season with a guy who can't throw the deep ball.
Yeah,
you just don't. All right.
And I mean, if you're looking, and also another thing, if you look at since he took over for Cutler, if you count the rest of the Washington game, he is 3-4.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a 3-4 record isn't. Yeah, he's playing very well, and he only has 1 interception during those games, which is saying a lot. And you can blame the defense for probably the majority of those losses, but 3-4 isn't. If he was, 6-1, that might change the conversation a little. But once again, like I'm saying, I don't think it's anything other than Chicago finally has gotten lucky in 2 things this season. One, they finally have a wide receiving core that they've never had, at least as long as I've been a Chicago Bears fan. And 2, they have a competent backup, which 2 years ago when it was 2 years ago when they lost to Green Bay in the playoffs, wasn't it? When Cutler went out.
Yeah, it was 2010, I think it was.
I mean, that was disgusting, and it was because we had no backup. Our backups went in, and it was laughable. It was a joke. But, finally we have somebody that can, not lose the game for you is the best way to probably put it. So to me, it's just a positive sign that we have a solid backup.
585-633-7487. Sorry, Steve. 585-633-7487 if you want to join the discussion. Go ahead, finish what you're saying.
I just, the thing that I'm sad about is, there's a lot of positives, and we are Bears fans, and there's a lot of positives with the wins, or with the win against Dallas and whatnot, but I'm still not feeling warm and fuzzy about us making the playoffs, mainly just because those 2 losses to Detroit, that's going to come back to bite us.
And
it really is.
And that Minnesota loss was just ridiculous.
Inexcusable. Well, the Minnesota loss was bad, but I mean...
That won't put the nail in the coffin, but we needed to split Detroit. Absolutely.
Unfortunately, the nail in the coffin might happen December 22nd.
Yeah, well...
which is going to be on NBC, the night game, which I am very happy because that's the same weekend that you have New Orleans at Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided to make the Chicago at Philly the flex game, which is awesome.
Philly's going to put up 65 points on this defense.
Oh, my God.
It's not even going to be close.
It's going to be bad.
It's going to be very, very sad. And it's not going to be any fault of Jay Cutler's or Josh McCown's, whoever's under center. And it's going to be the simple fact that the Bears cannot tackle.
No.
But back on the QB thing, your brother tweets in, no way do you re-sign Cutler to a huge contract. McCown holds till you find a real QB. Cutler takes the Bears. No, I could not disagree more. Regardless of what Cutler's stats say the last few years, Cutler was run into the ground by Lovie Smith and the carousel of offensive coordinators that just was, especially Mike Martz. It was just bound and determined to get that guy killed. Absolutely killed. Cutler's physical skills are more than enough to take the Bears where they need to go. Now, the problem is we're coming to a point where the Bears are more offensive-oriented than they are defense. They can't stop anybody. They can't tackle anybody. They can't cover anybody. There's no pass rush. In the middle, it was so, and I tweeted this Monday night, so spoiled by having Brian Urlacher in the middle for so many years that this is now painful to watch that second level of the defense just get shoved around and over-pursue and open up all these cutback lanes. It's so painful.
I agree with you on the defense. And I kind of agree with both you and my brother on Cutler. I think he should be able to come back next year, but I think they should do the franchise tag.
And they probably will.
Have him play, because I'm still not 100% sold on Jay Cutler. I'm not 100% sold on. Do I think he's got great physical skills? Yes. Do I think he has the mentality necessary to be a leader and a winner? Not necessarily. That I'm not sold on yet. So to me, I want to give him at least a second year, a full year in this offense to see exactly what he does. Because, he did start great. But once again, he has you can almost start to say after the last couple seasons, I don't want to say he's weak because the offensive line was horrible and he's gotten beat the hell up. But he's shown signs of, not being able to take a lot of punishment. And if Chicago's remains awful as far as the offensive line goes, that could be a negative. But to me, I think he deserves another season, but I would not sign him to a long-term deal as of right now. I would give him next year. I mean, $16.4 million. He'd already said he's more than happy to come back for that for one season. Let him play out the franchise tag. If he's successful next year, boom, sign him. Let him play out the rest of his career with Chicago. But I don't know. I think there's a lot to be seen, and I think we actually have the perfect coach to take Jay Cutler to that next level.
I completely agree with you. And your brother just compared him to Jeff George, so I'm done addressing your brother because that's just ridiculous. Jeff George was alienated people in the locker room, and if you want to know another reason why Jay Cutler should get another deal is if you ask the Bears players their opinion on this, all of them unanimously said Jay Cutler is their quarterback, is their man. There's no division in that locker room.
Which he did show me, something that the game against Dallas is he was on the sideline, and it was the most I have ever seen him taking part with all aspects of the game. I saw him talking to the defense. I saw him talking to the offensive line. I saw he was talking to McCown all game. He was almost like a coach. He was more like what you would see out of like a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning if they were injured. You know what I mean? That to me was kind of surprising, and I was happy to see that. Like that was a big step for me as far as gaining a little respect for him. But I still compare him to Phillip Rivers. I think him and Phillip Rivers are on par as the same because they're both hotheads. They both have insane abilities, but they both just are gunslingers. They're kind of like the Brett Favre, where they have no problem throwing it into quadruple coverage 50 yards down the field. So I always thought him and Phillip Rivers are almost identical in every way.
Let's while we got the time here,
which is not a bad thing.
Where are we going? Okay, let's go through the team by team, and let you tell me whether that team's quarterback you would take over Cutler. Okay. Philadelphia, Nick Foles. Would you take Nick Foles over Jay Cutler?
Yet to be seen.
No, I need a yes or a no answer here for this.
Yes.
Okay. Dallas, would you take Tony Romo?
No.
Eli Manning?
No.
Robert Griffin III?
No.
Matthew Stafford?
No.
Aaron Rodgers?
Yes.
Whoever's under center for Minnesota?
No.
Drew Brees?
Yes.
Cam Newton?
No.
Mike Glennon?
No.
Matt Ryan?
No.
Russell Wilson?
Yes.
Colin Kaepernick?
No.
Carson Palmer?
No.
Not Matthew Stafford. Sam Bradford?
No.
Tom Brady?
No, because of age. Nothing else. Just because of age, not ability.
Ryan Tannehill.
No.
Geno Smith.
No.
E.J. Manuel.
No.
Andy Dalton.
No.
Joe Flacco.
No.
Ben Roethlisberger.
Yes.
Brian Hoyer. I'm calling him the Cleveland starter, by the way. Brian Hoyer.
No.
Andrew Luck.
Yes.
Jake Locker.
No.
Chad Henne.
No.
Case Keenum.
No.
Peyton Manning.
No, but because of age, once again, nothing about ability.
Alex Smith.
No.
Phillip Rivers. Over
No.
Jay Cutler.
Same person, like I said. No.
And Terrell Pryor / Matt McGloin.
Nope.
So there's only 6 quarterbacks in this league right now that you would rather have than Jay Cutler. I'm sorry, being in the top 7 in this league is to quote Bill Walton, pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's no reason to let him go. There's no reason to not sign him, and you might as well give him a 3 or 4 year deal because why not? Even if you go draft somebody, there's nobody in this draft that's ready to start next September.
True. Depends.
Even Teddy Bridgewater, for all that he may be in the NFL, you don't need him to start in September.
I'm still interested to see how Manziel's going to do. I'm interested. I'm not saying he's going to do great.
Right.
I'm interested to see how he's going to do because of anyone, he has skills similar to kind of what you see from a lot of people are comparing him to what Brett Favre was when he was coming out of college. I see a little bit of Russell Wilson in him, not the maturity, of course, but some of the abilities. And he is smart with the way he runs. He's not, I mean, these quarterbacks that are running and diving into piles are just stupid. To me, Russell Wilson, I think, is brilliant the way he plays. Same as Aaron Rodgers, the way they run. So, yeah, you're right, though. I mean, there's really no one that you can just plug in. But that's why I'm saying give him 1 year. Let him prove it. Because if he goes the next year and throws a goose egg and you have him signed to 5 years, you're screwed. You're going to have to trade him for somebody and no one's going to want him. I mean, there are a lot of teams that don't want him now because of the past.
Dan Levitard brought up a great point that if he was the Bears, whatever contract I'm offering Jay Cutler, I offer it to him right now because his value is at its lowest right now.
Oh, absolutely.
I thought it was a great point. But all right, let's take a quick break as we are at the 10:30 mark. Catch our breath, and when we come back, let's see what's next up on the agenda. I got so click happy here. I got off my agenda here.
Keith.
We'll talk about
the Doc returning to Boston.
Well, we never talked about the RG3 benching. So we'll lead off with that after the break.
Oh, yeah. Let's lead off with that.
Yeah. You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio. Be back in a bit.
to find the rules of play.
You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio. Keith Grieve and Steve Taylor taking you through the second part of the segment. Top of the hour, Jim Saranteas from thefantasygreek.com.
Yeah.
Will join us as per his usual spot. And then also joining us, a very special guest to talk Texans football. Claire Mullins from NFLfemale.com will be joining us. At the Claire Bear 23 is her Twitter handle.
Oh, I love that song. I want to get up and start punching shit.
There really is no way to listen to this song and not want to punch something. I'm just saying.
Pretty much any song from any Rocky movie.
Living in America doesn't do that to me.
I just want to punch Ivan Drago. You know, when I hear that song, I want to point at Ivan Drago and be like, "Yeah, you suck. You're Russian."
We're Americans. We like to dance.
Yeah. It's James Brown. I feel good.
It's like you're just screaming to the USSR in those days. We love our James Brown, motherfucker.
That's right.
Oh, boy. So what if he beat his wife? We're willing to forgive here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No reason to
Man can
send
dance and
anybody,
sing like that.
no reason to send anybody to Siberia. All right. So the big news today, Washington Redskins head coach Mike Shanahan, at least for now, head coach of the Washington Redskins, is going to deactivate Robert Griffin III for the rest of the year and start Kirk Cousins. Obviously, the season is done and spoken for the Redskins. So you agree with the move? Wise, smart?
I absolutely agree with the move, and I love the timing. Because honestly, this move should have happened, after week. I know they beat Oakland in week 4, but at the bye week in week 5, they should have said, listen, you are not playing the way you do not look comfortable. We're just going to shut you down for a little bit, give you some rest, get you some rehabilitation, maybe come back and see if you can work at the end of the season or maybe just wait till next season. But the fact that he's doing it now, with all the turmoil going on between him and Daniel Snyder, and by him I mean Mike Shanahan, this is him with a big middle finger in the face saying, I am the coach and general manager of this team. Every move I make is because I am the one in charge. Regardless if you're the owner, Daniel Snyder, I'm the one in charge. I don't like your quarterback. I don't like his attitude, and I'm going to sit him, regardless if it's for the real reason, if it's for any other reason. It is such a blatant middle finger, and I love it. To me, this turmoil is fantastic because, A, I hate Daniel Snyder, and B, I even said in the beginning of the season, I know he's coming off an injury, but I thought Robert Griffin III was slightly overrated because a lot of people didn't know what to do with him. But now you're seeing with players like him, players like Kaepernick, teams have figured out how to play these guys that really have no solid pocket presence but are really good athletes. You figured out how to play them. And that's one of the things that's happened with RG3 is once you take away his legs, it's like me with basketball. Once I lost my speed, I'm a 4'6" rock. I'm not going to be able to play. Robert Griffin III, he's a good quarterback, but he's not the greatest pocket quarterback. And if you take away his speed, he becomes average. And that's what happened this year. So to me, I love it. I love how it's happening like this. And it is just going to be entertaining as hell for the rest of the season, especially if Kirk Cousins comes in and plays amazing. That's just going to make it even greater.
Well, Kirk Cousins may come in and play well. I mean, he was a talented kid coming out of college. I'm surprised, A, that he lasted as long as he did, and 2, that he went to Washington, who had already drafted Robert Griffin III.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense at this point because the season's lost. There's no momentum you're going to gain from trotting Robert Griffin III out there again. You might as well just hit a reset and just start focusing on next year. Just reload and regroup. And you get Cousins out there to showcase, to possibly dangle out as trade bait.
Yep.
To maybe get a decent draft pick because the Redskins have multiple holes. This season's disaster is not all on Robert Griffin III's shoulders by any stretch of the imagination.
No, not at all.
You have a bad defense, which, how much of it is bad? You think about it, a lot of the defenses that we thought were going to be good this year have been really marginalized. The Bears we thought were going to be decent. The Broncos we thought were going to be good. They've underperformed as far as I'm concerned.
Oh my God, they're terrible.
The Texans have been just a giant sinkhole as far as talent. So I just wonder, how much are the rule changes really taking away some of these defenses that we thought were going to be decent. But anyway, that's a topic for another story. But
you do understand that there is the slim possibility, because there's a lot of talk about Mike Shanahan next season, because it's obvious he's done with the Redskins after this year. I mean,
there's some people saying he's trying to give fires so that he can take the Texans job.
Exactly. Wouldn't it be interesting if he takes the Texans job? And there's a lot of people saying the Texans might trade their pick so they can fill a lot of holes. Mike Shanahan has shown a lot of love and affection for Kirk Cousins, who is a very good quarterback. Wouldn't it be interesting if Mike Shanahan next season is the coach of the Houston Texans with Kirk Cousins as a starting quarterback?
Straight out of any
There's
given
a possibility.
Sunday. Straight out of any given Sunday.
Yeah.
Seriously.
It is. And it is a legitimate, like, it really could happen.
Only thing that's missing is Kirk Cousins needs to come out of the opening huddle and just start vomiting everywhere. That's the only thing that's missing out of this.
And Dennis Quaid.
Right. Well, but it's ironic because you have the slow quarterback coming in for the mobile one. In any given Sunday, it was the other way around.
Exactly.
But anyway, it is what it is.
I love it.
I don't know. So the other thing we wanted to talk to before we take our next break to get into the NFL hour was Doc Rivers returning to Boston. And apparently the Celtics had a nice tribute video for him, and none of the fans booed him. But you are a Celtics fan, and I'm a Laker fan, so I got no love lost for the Celtics. But the way that it all unfolded with Rivers wanting out so bad, I'd be a little irritated if I was a Celtics fan, and I probably would have booed him if I was there. But that's just me. I'm that kind of fan. As a Celtics fan, would you have booed him?
No. I wanted to boot him. Let's say he did his part for Celtic Green, got us a championship. I've heard the grumblings that there were potentially issues between him and Danny Ainge and disagreements, and he just really didn't want to go through a rebuild, and I can't blame a guy for not wanting to go through the complete and total rebuild that the Celtics are going through right now. He actually had talked about prior to leaving the Celtics potentially retiring altogether. So for him to say, listen, I don't want to be part of a rebuild. I want to go to a team where I have a chance to win another title, which, going to a Clippers team that's fully loaded and ready to go, as soon as he can teach them defense, they have a legitimate shot of taking the title this year. To me, it's that part of the pros now where it is a business. So especially in the NBA, I mean, other than Tim Duncan, I mean, how many players that have been can you say have been with the team for like 12, 13 years like him? Players are moving all around. Kobe Bryant's still with the Lakers, but there's not many coaches that are still coaching the same teams. I mean, it's out of all the sports, this one it just seems like there's no real, I'm going to stick with this team for my entire career. There's very few.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So that doesn't really bother me. I love Doc Rivers. He's a great coach.
But it's like asking out of your contract. I don't know. It goes back to the whole point that there's nothing more meaningless in sports than coaching contracts.
Yeah.
As far as length, because the owners you could get fired or they just ask out and go wherever they damn well please. So it's worse in college sports because you're recruiting young men to stay with an institution for 4 years, and you might up and leave. But anyway, I don't want the guy to ask out. I'd rather him get fired. You know what I mean? I just have a problem with that. So
well, I mean, honestly, it was a mutual decision till he asked out, and Danny Ainge gave him full availability to go speak to other teams, go speak to, the Clippers. So to me, I also, you got to wonder, was there a disagreement on where to take the team next? You know what I mean? Even if the rebuild was discussed, was there a disagreement on like how they want to do it, who you want to go for, who you want to get rid of? If they didn't see eye to eye on it, then why keep somebody around that doesn't agree with? Because I mean, a rebuild to me is a huge undertaking. It's not something that unless you're 100% into it as a coach, I would rather that coach not be there. Like, I love Doc Rivers, championship coach, but if he wasn't 100% into helping rebuild that team, I didn't want him there. I would rather him go and go with our blessing, because I think they made the right choice, because now they have a young coach who can kind of get along with these younger players they're bringing in. He knows the players better, you would almost say, than what Doc Rivers does. Doc Rivers knows how to motivate people, but maybe he doesn't know how to associate with some of these younger guys. So, I mean, it could be anything, but
Well, they're not missing a beat without him. Boston is in first place in the Atlantic
They're
Division.
missing a lot of beats.
It goes back to our discussion last week about the miserable Eastern Conference. Boston is in first place with a 10-14 record.
Yeah, if you didn't know, I'm in 8th place, just myself. I'm in 8th place in the Eastern Conference, so I might actually make the playoffs.
Oh my God! The leader of the Atlantic Division has a .417 winning percentage. That just boggles my mind. Here's another stat. Okay, there's 3 teams in the Eastern Conference where if you look at their point differential, they are positive. Okay, so for the season, there are 3 teams in the Eastern Conference that are outscoring their opponents as far as a grand total. Okay, can you name them?
In the Eastern Conference?
In the Eastern Conference. 3 Eastern Conference teams with a positive point differential. Don't look it up.
Well, Miami Heat.
Yep, that's one. That's an obvious one.
Indiana Pacers.
Yep.
And Philadelphia 76ers?
Wrong. I'll give you one more guess, and then I'll end the suspense.
I'm trying to think here. I'm going to take a shot because I don't think it's an obvious one. I'm going to say Detroit Pistons.
No. The Atlanta Hawks.
Atlanta Hawks.
They're 11-11, and their point differential is plus 0.1.
Wow. That's crazy.
They got the
Which
Pacers.
it makes sense for a team that's 500 to be that close.
Yeah, right. The Pacers are plus 8.5. The Heat are 7.0. Then you jump down to the Hawks at 0.1, and then everyone else is at negative point differential.
Yeah.
Average, by the way. That's
I'll be
based on
honest.
the
I got to kind of agree with Charles Barkley. He was on the Dan Patrick show the other day, and Dan Patrick asked him about, what's he think of the current state of the NBA, and Charles Barkley said it's disgusting. These guys don't know how to play basketball. It's a one-on-one league, and he said it's a shame to see the sport get to this. And I have to agree with him. Like, I tried to watch a couple basketball games, and it's unless you're watching a team like San Antonio or Indiana, a team that plays defense and offense and plays as a team, it really is gross. I mean, it's not what I grew up loving. Like, I grew up same as you. I live and died. I had Basketball Digest delivered to my house once a week, and I would read through it until it fell apart. I would circle. I would write notes. I loved basketball because it was such a great sport, and now it is just a shell of what it used to be, and it's sad.
Watch one of those classic hardwood mashups on NBA TV.
Oh, my God.
From the 80s or the 70s, and they are racing up and down the court. This game plods along. Everyone plays defense with their arms. You know what I mean? They don't play with their feet like you're supposed to. There's no real hustle. Everything's about dunks and alley-oops and three-pointers. The finer points of the game are lost. But what do you expect when you allow 18, 19-year-olds to jump into the league?
Exactly.
So,
and that's the thing is this is the same kind of game that was there during the 70s, which led to the downfall of the NBA before Bird and Magic brought back a more fundamental game in the 80s. And now it's going right back to what it was in the 70s, that is, I think, the biggest problem is you have to look at that now and say, are they heading towards another major dip in quality, in attendance, in viewership? I mean, you look at some of these games. What was the other night? Oklahoma City was playing. I can't remember who they were playing, but there was like maybe 12,000 people in the stands. And when Oklahoma City won, Kevin Durant and Westbrook, they actually went to the stands to talk to the few guests that were there, the few fans. And that to me is like, come on.
Yeah, it's the quality
It's
of basketball.
disgusting.
If you're a basketball fan, it's hard to watch. Absolutely. But let's take a quick break. When we come back, NFL Hour, Jim Saranteas joins us, as well as Claire Mullins, to talk Texans football. You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio. Be right back in a few minutes, folks.
you till so far away. I know. Can't walk away from the things you say, the things you say, yeah, the price you pay, the price you pay for love. Can't walk away from the things you say, the things you say, yeah, the price you pay, the price you pay for love. No, no, no. Can't walk away from the things you say, the things you say, yeah, the price you pay, the price you pay for love. Can't walk away from the things you say, can't walk away, yeah, the price you pay, the price you pay for love. Can't walk away, we're gonna make it better now. We're gonna make it better now. Anytime that you are falling, I'll fall too. Yeah, we can jump down and never go back. So why do you stop yourself? There's no use waiting. We never waited before. So long as you feel the same, then we should go again. And it's so good. Go all into your night. 'Cause something inside me said we're gonna make it better now. We're gonna make it better now. Anytime I hear it calling, I find you, feeling so real, living for free. So why do we stop ourselves? 'Cause life ain't waiting. Pack it up and then we're gone. I whisper close to your ear, we're gonna make it better now. 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 Anytime that you are falling, anytime that you are falling, anytime I hear it calling, I find you, feeling so real, living for free. So why do we stop ourselves? 'Cause life ain't waiting. Pack it up and then we're gone. I whisper close to your ear, we're gonna make it better now. We're gonna make it better now. We're gonna make it better now. We're gonna make it better now.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio. Keith Grieve and Steve Taylor, and now joined by Jim Saranteas from thefantasygreek.com, as always, for our NFL Hour. And we are joined now by a very special guest. Thank you very much for joining us, Ms. Claire Mullins, the official fan reporter from NFLfemale.com, co-host of the Wednesday Night with the NFL Female podcast. Claire, thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight.
Well, we brought you on because one of the enigmas this NFL season has been the Houston Texans.
Yes.
At least one of us picked Texans to go to the Super Bowl for the AFC.
I picked them to win the Super Bowl.
You did.
To start. I did.
And Jim and I picked the Broncos, but we both picked the Texans to go to the AFC Championship game, if I recall correctly. So, from your standpoint now, because we all have our own variety of theories, but you're in it. So, where did this season go wrong?
A lack of depth and a lack of making adjustments during the game, during the season, during everything.
It seemed to start with the decision to sign Ed Reed, and it all went downhill from there.
Yeah. That was, from all understanding, that was basically a CEO decision. Mm-hmm. Go out and get Ed Reed. Make it happen. We want a big name, a Super Bowl champion, because there aren't any Super Bowl champions on the Houston Texans without Ed Reed. And they were in that mindset. They needed someone who could get everybody on the same page on what it takes to get there. And I think they may have rushed through a few of the health issues. They didn't quite look at everything. But Ed Reed's been, until I think last week, he was basically 0-10 throughout the season. So he was making no contribution anywhere he was.
So now, the other major story coming out as far as personnel-wise was the ultimate and sudden and complete collapse of Matt Schaub as a serviceable quarterback. Do you think they rode that too long? And do you think Kubiak's fate was actually sealed when he put him back in 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if it was 2 weeks ago that it was sealed. I think that this is a very loyal organization. And Gary Kubiak is a very loyal human being. He brought Rick Smith over from Denver. You know that he and Shanahan worked together with John Elway until Elway retired. They were just all very loyal to each other. And that's how Gary was. He found someone who would run the offense the way Gary wanted it run, which was Matt Schaub. He was going to go down with that ship. Case Keenum, who is now the starting QB for the Texans, he does not run the offense in the way that Gary Kubiak wanted it. That's the reason why I think Matt Schaub went back in the last game, and that's what ultimately sealed his fate. I think that the fact that he stuck with Matt Schaub through the beginning of the season, through the woes, we really could legitimately be 0-13 right now. We barely won the first 2 games we won. So the writing's been on the wall for a while. The fans have noticed it. I think that the administration was a little bit blind to it, but the league had figured out what Kubiak under Shanahan had created, and you see very similar problems for the Shanahan tree throughout the NFL right now.
Right, you had Arian Foster battling injuries until ultimately he went under the knife. Schaub unable to stop throwing it to the other team, and then Keenum comes in and it just seems to has a good first couple of games, and then it seems as soon as Kubiak got out of the hospital, I hate to talk like this, but as soon as Kubiak got out of the hospital, Keenum's effectiveness went in the tank a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I can't necessarily pin them together, but after, when Keenum goes in, he's young and, he's just letting it fly out there. He hasn't been hit yet in an NFL game. Mm-hmm. Whenever he isn't getting that much protection at the line and he starts anticipating that hit, which is inevitably coming because we're not protecting him very well, he gets dancy and he'll go backward and he'll take a really hard sack 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And that's become a bigger and bigger issue. He can make the big plays if he gets the guy on his first or second read. If he doesn't get that first or second read, he cannot create the time within the pocket to actually get the ball away and make a play happen. He'll take the hit, he'll take the sack, and then he gets a little bit more jittery every time. If you look at a chart of his stats from the beginning, from his first game to this last game, everything, I mean, it's constantly going downhill for Case Keenum. So he's not developing. I mean, he's 6.5 games in, give or take, because of the time he got pulled, against both Oakland and last week. But, yeah, I mean, honestly, his first game was against Kansas City. It was at the time the best defense, the best, the stoutest line in the league. You had Houston, Holly coming at him. He wasn't set up for success in the league under Kubiak. So he's getting his chance right now. He's the starter through the end of the season, and we're going to see what the current administration can help him figure out how to get this offense going.
Well, we are we broadcast out of Rochester, New York, which is down the thruway from Buffalo. So we've seen Wade Phillips work up close and personal with the Buffalo Bills, and we feel for you. Yep. I'm just going to say that. We do. We're very sorry for you. So let's play a little game. You are the Texans owner. What kind of head coach are you going after?
If I'm the Texans owner, and I just saw that 93 Houston thing going on, I need someone who is young and brash and can be in charge of overall of everything. Not saying he can't be an offensive mind, not saying he can be a defensive mind, but I need someone who will make sure everybody is in their place and knows their role. Because the way it is now, people want to blame Rick Smith, the GM, who Kubiak, the coach, brought in the GM, which is a little backward.
Right, absolutely.
The GM didn't have a lot of say in who got drafted the last 8 years, and people want to blame Rick Smith, the GM. But Kubiak and Wade Smith, and Wade Phillips filled in a lot of the holes in our roster, not necessarily Rick Smith. So I think you need somebody who can hold their own and work in collaboration with the GM, and not people deciding when is their time to be the leader, because there were different aspects for everybody to be in charge of different things, and Rick Smith was just sort of there to make sure it didn't all fall apart, and eventually it did. So, yeah, younger, brasher, if you got to be a disciplinarian, you got to be a hothead, that's okay with me. I think that's okay with the administration, as long as you're respectful and you treat the players like adults and you make sure they get out there and do their job. And you make sure the defensive coordinator is doing what's in accordance with what's in the team's best interest, and the offensive coordinator is doing the same. They're just all on different pages for the past couple of years. And, while each page was successful, the offense didn't do the defense any favors this season. The defense held up, I think, as best it could with the holes. But since we got Wade Phillips, our draft picks have been less and less effective. And I think they go other places, like Connor Barwin went somewhere else. I'm trying to think of who else. There were a couple who went other places and were quite effective. And you look at him in the Texans scheme and you're, why wouldn't that guy perform for us? It just kind of makes you wonder about the efficacy of the coaching staff. It's been a question all season long.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's absolutely clear, because the reality is the Texans boasted a top 5 defense last year, and offensively, even though they may not have had the greatest passing game last season, the one thing that they dominated on, that even though still respectfully ranked this year, is certainly sort of a linchpin as to why the offense is sort of falling apart, is their rushing game. They were top 5 last season, and this season they're middle of the road.
Yeah, and I mean, and you can blame it on, Arian got hurt. People doubted the fact whether or not he was really hurt. But if you look at that old Broncos offense, they run their running backs into the ground within a few years, and they ultimately have a career-ending injury. And if Arian comes back, fantastic. I would love for him to be back. I'm a big fan of Arian Foster. But, right now we have Ben Tate, who may be trade bait. We have a couple, we have Dennis Johnson. We got rid of Sierra Wood, who was had a little issue with marijuana, apparently. But,
it's only an issue because it's
luckily,
illegal.
running backs aren't as hard to come by as a pass rusher or a quarterback. So, hopefully we can replace Arian if we need to.
I didn't realize until doing prep this afternoon that the Houston Texans have given up the second fewest passing yards this season.
Mm-hmm.
Only Seattle has a better pass defense in terms of yardage.
Yeah.
Their defense is actually dominant. It's just that in terms of red zone defense, they're awful. I looked it up, and I can't tell you exactly where the unit ranks in this, but let me see, where did I put the numbers? Oh, I had them right in front of me.
No problem.
Here we go.
We'll just wait for you, Jim. Go ahead.
Oh, I know. 34 pass TDs, 11 rush TDs, 5 special team TDs, 39 field goals.
Wow.
So, you go from a and I mean, it really shows the offense. Even if you want to sit there and say, well, this they have the fourth point score, but they're giving up the 6th most points.
Yeah.
And even if you shut every team down in terms of, because their pass defense is phenomenal, even if you shut or slow down teams on the field, if you can't keep them out of the red zone, you're never going to win a football game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the red zone defense, the red zone offense as well. And we aren't creating turnovers. We aren't creating big plays on defense. I mean, J.J. Watt gets to the quarterback several times a game, but we're not getting the ball. And then on offense, we're letting the other team take the ball. So if they don't get a pick six, they're usually within striking distance of the end zone and they can score on us. So I've been real leery of our, as it was until a couple of weeks ago, number one defense in the league statistics. Just because the way that we give the ball up on offense and allow other defenses to score points, it really skews the numbers, in my opinion, because then they're working with a really short field typically, and so we don't give up that many yards to get the ball back to our offense, and I think it's really complicated to break it down because there's so many variables, but I think that our offensive woes have had a lot to do with an interesting disparity within the defensive numbers.
Well, the Texans are minus 14 in turnover differential. The only team worse than them in the AFC is the Jets. So,
and I actually think they're the second worst in the league, Keith.
Yeah, I was looking at ESPN.com. They only break it down by conference. They're at minus 14. Yes, that would put them second worst in the league.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want to look at that, I think those are the things that coaching creates. I mean, you look at teams like, I was watching the Ravens, and I forget what it was, but whenever they were tackling, they were always at the ball. And you have to coach that. You have to instill that in your players that you're going after the ball every time. Mm-hmm. Or like with penalties. Last week, the Texans had 14 penalties for 177 yards.
Yeah, you're not going anywhere.
Those are coaching flaws. It shows me that the coaches were looking to essentially, I think, put points on the board and focus on, just stopping what is happening on offense as opposed to making big plays happen and avoiding big plays. So I don't know that they were focused on the big picture necessarily.
Okay. So now one last question and then I'll let you go. If you're the Texans GM, Rick Smith, and you're at the draft, what position are you looking at first? It's too early to tell who or name names, but what position are you looking at first and foremost with your first round pick?
Unless something happens in free agency, I'll preface it with that, because things happen in free agency that could totally change the draft preferences. I'm looking at a quarterback. You're going nowhere without a quarterback, and honestly, I haven't seen anything from Case Keenum to show me that he's anything more than a backup. Beyond that, secondly, I'm looking at pass rush. Definitely need someone on the other side of J.J. Watt. Brian Cushing's been down the last 2 years, and our defense collapses. We need additional help there. Wade's draft picks did not pan out with Brooks Reed and Whitney Merciless. They're just not producing. And then the third thing I'm looking for definitely is working on that offensive line. Like I said, we have 2 rookies on IR who were drafted, and they could potentially fill in some of those holes, but they're not getting any younger on the left side of the line either. And, I don't necessarily trust it's going to hold up for a new quarterback.
All righty. Well, Claire, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure for me.
Claire Mullins, folks, NFLfemale.com, the Houston Texans official fan reporter and also co-host Wednesday Night with the NFL Female podcast. Follow her on Twitter at TheClaireBear23. Truly one of the more entertaining follows on Twitter, and I'm not just saying that. It is fantastic.
Keith, Steve, Jim, thank you guys for having me.
It was a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you.
All
Good
right.
night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll go through all our Week 15 picks. You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio.
Ready? 1. You will do this 4 times with the left, 4 with the right, then 8 times with both, then repeat.
87 Live on 87sportsfans.com. Thank you all for listening. That's right, little Beastie Boys there. I thought Jim would be disappointed that I didn't have Beasties at the beginning of the last segment. So I decided to hit the home run this one. Okay, that one's just for you, Jim.
Just trying to keep things hip here, Keith.
Okay.
Bring a little Saturday night to Wednesday night on 87 Sports Fans.
That's right. The Club 87.
That's right.
Reminder that this and every broadcast is brought to you by CG Imaging. For all your digital imaging, rendering, or schematic needs, go to cg-imaging.com. CG Imaging, virtually creating reality. And now we get into the pick segment. We skipped our little recap because we had such a wonderful segment with Claire Mullins from NFLfemale.com the last 20 minutes. If you didn't hear it after we're done broadcasting, go back and listen to it. So here we are, Week 15. I definitively lost my fantasy playoff game last week, not because of the advice you gave me, Jim, but because of the fact that I decided to stick with Matthew Stafford in the snow.
Yep.
And
I am proud to say I am 3 for 4 right now. I'm in 3 playoffs out of my 4 fantasy leagues this year.
I lost my playoff game with Phillip Rivers on my bench, and I went with Matthew Stafford, who got me a negative -0.1.
But once again, the weather report was way off. They said there would be flurries, but nothing like the biblical snow that fell in Philadelphia.
Yeah. It was quite bad. But last week's picks, Steve won the week yet again. He goes 12-4. The games that he got right, surprisingly, were Jacksonville over Houston, which, when you made that pick, we were all kind of, doing that. But now you're doing the... So it kind of goes...
One of the hottest teams in the NFL, Jacksonville Jaguars.
Blows my mind.
Yeah, they are.
Absolutely blows my
It's
mind.
so weird to say that.
Just weeks ago, where everybody talked. They were the laughingstock of the NFL.
Yep. We were all wrong about the Falcons beating the Packers. We were all wrong about the Steelers beating the Dolphins, which I got to tell you something. I have no use for the Steelers anymore. I got to tell you. Le'Veon Bell, just that team does not want – they don't want to win. I'm sorry. They just don't.
And that's too bad because Ben Roethlisberger is actually putting up a really good season.
Yeah.
It's just everyone else around him is
terrible.
Terrible.
All right, Jim, I got a Facebook lineup question. PPR League playoffs. Monty Ball or Rashard Mendenhall?
Oh, Mendenhall.
Mendenhall
I would play him this week. It is such a favorable matchup.
Okay, and there we get that. We get that knocked right out of the top here. So the season standings. Steven leading the league at 112, 61-1, and Jim in second place at 108, 67-1, and there's me in last place, 175.
I know nothing.
So, at least I hit the 100 win mark.
Yeah.
Consider that a success. And now my dreams of winning this title are pretty much come crashing to a halt. So now let's look forward to Week 15. The games that we agree on. We're all picking the Denver Broncos over the San Diego Chargers. We're all picking the Bears to beat the Browns, the Niners to beat the Buccaneers, the Colts to beat the Texans, the Falcons to beat the Redskins, the Seahawks to beat the Giants, the Jaguars over Buffalo. That's right. We are picking the Jacksonville Jaguars. All three of us are picking the Jacksonville Jaguars to win. We are officially on the Jacksonville bandwagon, if there is one. If there is one, we're on it. If there isn't one, we're making one. We're all picking the Eagles to beat the Vikings, the Panthers to beat the Jets, the Chiefs to beat the Raiders, the Saints to beat the Rams, the Cardinals to beat the Titans, which I don't really feel good about that game either. And we're all picking the Lions over the Ravens on Monday Night Football.
I have a quick question for Jim. This is a fantasy question. This is something that I've been killing myself over the last couple days. If you had the choice, Tom Brady at Miami or Andrew Luck at home against Houston, I cannot decide. The way as streaky as Andrew Luck's been playing, I can't make that decision.
Yeah, I think it's a tough call. I think right now I have Tom Brady as an on-the-gridiron player, where I have Andrew Luck more as a coach's decision, leaning towards playing him if you have to. Here's the way I fantasy football at this time of year, as well as football in general, we're looking for the best players, and you're pretty much playing them unless it's clear that you shouldn't. And by that is, if you had Tom Brady and Nick Foles, I would say, oh, you're playing Nick Foles. I mean, he just has such a great matchup. Or Matt Stafford, he has such a great matchup this weekend. But when it gets close like this, I don't doubt the Dolphins are a great team, great defense. They play the quarterback well. They play the pass well. But we saw a little bit of how they could be taken advantage of last weekend. And I think Tom Brady, even without Rob Gronkowski, he's going to be going to Julian Edelman. He's going to be going to Danny Amendola. Anybody on the field that can touch that. Oh, and by the way, let's not forget the running backs for the Patriots, even though Stephen Ridley is sort of hands-off right now, and that can certainly change in the next 2 weeks. If you look back at, I think they played back in week 2, the Patriots won that game, and they mostly won it because of the Patriots' running game. Every running back got in the action, and I believe they had 2 rushing scores. So that's why I would stick with Tom and sort of be a little leery about Andrew Luck. But, the matchup's not that bad. So, but no, I agree. I wouldn't want to chance a fantasy playoff win or loss on Andrew Luck right now.
Well, I thank you, sir. That helped.
You're welcome.
You know he's going to blame you next week if he loses, just for the record.
I'm well aware.
That goes without saying. But
all right.
It's the territory. I mean, that's why I get paid the big bucks to make these decisions for people or help them make.
That's right.
Or have people go, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm going to go the other way.
You really are in a lose-lose industry.
For sure.
Absolutely. I give you a lot of credit because I wouldn't be able to give this much advice and handle all the blowback.
Well, most of the time, and I know we're sort of off topic, but it's more of looking at your choices and trying to make the best one.
Like if you have a quarterback playing in a blizzard versus one playing in sunny San Diego.
You know what's great about that? You make me laugh. Is I had Nick Foles starting this past week, and I immediately benched him and put Josh McCown in as soon as I saw the weather.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
that. Appreciate it. Very big of you.
Why didn't you do that, Keith?
I think we're losing you, Jim. Sorry, going through a tunnel.
Is it the snow?
Yeah. That button that I have with my little cake plate there, yeah, I'm reaching for that one right now.
Yeah, nice.
Okay, anyway, back on topic. So the games that we disagree with. New England at Miami. Steve and Jim are both picking the Patriots. I am picking the Dolphins at home. Why, might you ask? Well, it's a home. The Dolphins are at home. New England just lost Gronkowski, and I'm not at all thrilled with the way the Patriots are playing. I like the fact that the Dolphins are scrappy right now. I like the fact that they went through what they went through with that whole offensive lineman being overly sensitive and blah, 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 because I think that they've weathered that storm. And I think that this is a game that if they really are serious about contending, not only for the division, but to get in the playoffs and make some noise in the playoffs, this is a game they have to win. And I'm picking Miami to surprise people. Picking Miami to surprise people.
See, to me, I looked at this game, and a team like New England, a championship team, a veteran team, they know they want that number 2 pick or that number 2 position in the postseason. And if you look at Kansas City, they kind of have a easier game against Oakland this week, but then they have a game against Indy, and they finish the season at San Diego. And New England, they know they need to win out. If they win out, they have a very good chance they'll have that number 2 seed, which is something that they would desperately want. So to me, a team with their ability, their leadership, I just don't see them losing the rest of the season.
All right. I guess I'm the idiot.
I don't want to go there, but
that's all right. I will. I'll do it for you. The last game, Green Bay at Dallas. Or I'm sorry, not the last game, but the second game, Green Bay at Dallas. Steve and Jim are both picking the Cowboys at home. I could have done that, But watching the Cowboys Monday night, they cannot cover anyone. If they had a 50-yard wide blanket that was draped over the field, they would not be able to cover anybody. And Green Bay throws, and now you throw in Eddie Lacy, and the Cowboys are almost as bad or just a little bit worse at rush defense than the Packers are, but they're averaging almost 300 yards allowed through the air. Even Matt Flynn can take advantage of that, and I'm going to pick Green Bay to pull the upset on the road. Nothing, huh? Crickets.
Yeah, the Cowboys are just a better team at home, which is why I picked the Cowboys. And without Aaron Rodgers, I just can't see Green Bay Packers. Even if what you say is true in their coverage, I just can't see Matt Flynn being that kind of a quarterback.
Right. Yeah, and you could look at the Cowboys when they lost to Chicago. I mean, what was it? Negative, or not negative, but it was like maybe 2-3 degrees out.
It was -5. It
was -5. It's not going to be -5 in Dallas. So to me, that obviously would affect any team as far as their offense, and you could even say defensive play, regardless of the fact that everyone knows their defense is struggling. So to me, like Jim said, the Cowboys are much different at home. The weather conditions are going to be a lot different. Romo could. Because as bad as the Cowboys' defense is, the Green Bay's isn't that much better.
The best tweet I saw after the Monday night game was Bears cornerback Tim Jennings. He tweeted that was the coldest game that he's ever played in. And then the hashtag that he ended it with was, Jesus almost took the wheel.
Wow.
What?
He said Jesus almost took the wheel, like he froze to death. Almost froze to death.
My God.
I laughed out loud. Literally.
That's pretty funny.
Not just typed LOL. I literally laughed out loud.
I bet you did, LOL.
Okay. So then the next game that is a source of consternation, Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. Steven, you are the only one picking the Steelers to beat the Bengals. Why on earth do you have any faith in the Steelers team?
I'm one of the few I am the only one out of this group that's had faith in them most weeks. Just to me, I look at this as this is a big game. This is a rivalry game. The Battle of Ohio or not Ohio. What am I thinking? I'm thinking two different things. It's just these two teams. It's got a classic rivalry. You have Pittsburgh at home. They are a very proud franchise. Their offense, they're having issues with the running game, but Ben Roethlisberger's putting up a great year. Antonio Brown is having a great year. Even though their defense is old and they show signs of weakness more times than not, I just think this team has too much pride. And Cincinnati, their defense has been playing well pretty much throughout the season, but their offense is still, I don't have that much faith in Andy Dalton. He had a very good week last week, but the 2 or 3 weeks before that, he was just awful. He didn't even show up. So to me, I have more faith that Roethlisberger will show up and have a big game than I do Dalton will show up and be able to put up the same kind of numbers. So to me, it wasn't an easy pick. It really wasn't. It honestly, once again, if it was flip-flop, if they were playing at Cincinnati, I would have went with the Bengals. But since it's in Pittsburgh, like I said, the Steelers they have a slim chance, I believe, of making the postseason. But with a win by either Baltimore or Miami this week, that could throw that out the window. But for me, they're a team that still has a chance. They have a lot of pride. I know they've had some issues lately, especially with all the stuff that went down with Mike Tomlin 2 weeks ago against Baltimore. To me, I think the Steelers are going to win.
I think. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Jim.
Steve, I would agree with you. I thought this was a tough game to call, and certainly if the game was being played in Cincinnati, it would have been a no-brainer to say Bengals should win this hands down, no questions asked. But when you look at this, both teams right now, well, I agree. I think the Steelers' offense has done some very great things. Ben Roethlisberger is certainly playing well above expectations after what I would say was a fairly bad first half of the season. Last week was a great indication sort of where this team's season is going. And all these little things that you keep mentioning, I think they have a cumulative effect to hold a team back from sort of reaching potential. And I'm not saying that they're not going to fight, they're not going to battle this out, but with the Bengals, one, on the precipice of making the playoffs, but two, really being a team that could do something. They're going to play this game so hard. And that's sort of why I took the Bengals in the end. Just on paper, I looked at it, I go, this is the better team, and I'm taking them.
I look at what types of teams these are. Pittsburgh is not a running team. Cincinnati is averaging 116 yards per game. That allows them to obviously control the clock, control the ball, possessions, blah, blah, blah. Other than that, statistically, these teams are very evenly matched. But the Cincinnati defense is averaging under 100 yards on the ground per game, which plays into it because Pittsburgh doesn't like to run the ball much at all.
And I'll just throw in, I think the Bengals are doing what it takes to win.
No, I agree. I agree. My problem with the Bengals this season has been that they seem to struggle in games that they should win or lose, like the Miami game. Like losing to Baltimore, even though it was on the road, going to overtime and losing. That's a game that was winnable, and they should have won that. The first game at Cleveland, you go into Cleveland, fourth game of the year, and you lose 17-6. And again, I was Cleveland's biggest supporter earlier in the year.
Yeah.
And one thing we didn't talk about because we didn't do a recap was how valiantly that Browns team played against the Patriots last week. But
see, that all this went into my decision is because if you look at Cincinnati, they're 6-0 at home, they're very good, but then you look at them on the road, they're 3-4, and just like you said, they've had the struggles on the road where they shouldn't have against teams that they shouldn't have had those issues with.
But
so to me, I mean, they had to squeak out a victory at Buffalo, and Buffalo has shown that they're not all they're cracked up to be.
But they've also gone on the road and they've beaten Detroit. They've beaten San Diego.
The San Diego one was shocking, and most people were shocked.
They
very shocked.
Yeah, they, like Jim said, they did just enough to win in those games.
Yeah,
27-24, 17-10. The Bengals are not going to light the world on fire, by any stretch of the imagination. But I think the Steelers are that much of a mess. They need an offensive identity.
A lot of the games that they won on the road, Andy Dalton played very well. Like you're talking about the Lions game. I mean, he was 372 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. But which Andy Dalton is going to show up? That's the thing that I always question now. Is it going to be the Andy Dalton that puts up 372 yards, or is it going to be the Andy Dalton that puts up less than 100 yards? I don't know. I think that's what's keeping me from really getting on the Bengals bandwagon as far as being in full support of them going into the postseason. Dalton has not proven. In the beginning of the season, I had high hopes for him. I thought, hey, he's playing great, but then he just had some awful games down the stretch here. I mean, I know last week was a big bounce back, but. Yeah. It really is which Andy Dalton is going to show up. That to me is going to be the main difference in this game.
Let's put it this way: we're in week 15. If they can't put it together, even though it's on the road, if they can't put it together this week, then you cannot take this team seriously going towards the playoffs. You can't.
That's true.
Week 3, week 4. You're still trying to find a rhythm. You know what I mean? The preseason's over. You get into the regular season. You're the Bengals. You lose week 1 to Chicago. You're still trying to find a rhythm. You lose on a safety in overtime. These things happen. It's week 15. Now your team needs to know what it's about, what it does in certain situations. There's no staring at your playlist wondering what would work on a 3rd and 6 in crunch time. You need to know that this play gets that every time that you run it at this point. So if they go into Pittsburgh and they can't execute on all cylinders, if they're still fumbling and they find a way to somehow not put this game away or eventually lose this game, then you absolutely cannot take them seriously.
No, I mean, and if you look at it, Baltimore, even with all of their losses this year as far as personnel, they're still breathing down their throat for the North title. So if Cincinnati loses this game, Baltimore wins this week, they're only one game back. So it's going to be, this out of all of the AFC, I mean, the East, the South, and the West, I'm going to say the West is settled because Denver has the two victories over Kansas City. Pretty much all those other divisions are settled except for this one. So I think it could be very interesting. If Cincinnati loses this game, can make life very interesting for the last couple weeks.
All right. We got about 10 minutes left in the program. 12 minutes left in the program. Let's go down the games. And Jim, you tell me any fantasy notes that you want to mention about each game, okay? Are you there?
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, hello. Hello.
Okay.
Somebody call 911. Somebody call 911. Okay. San Diego at Denver. You got your must-starts are obviously your Phillip Rivers and your Peyton Mannings and everything. But with Wes Welker now being out, what does that do to the Broncos' offensive options?
Well, I think for the main ones, such as Eric Decker, Julius Thomas, Demaryius Thomas, I think it improves them. And, I mean, this is a game where you're starting everybody, pretty much. You could even flex Danny Woodhead in and, you're starting the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, running backs. I like this game for Matthews, Ryan Matthews for the Chargers, because I want to say the Broncos are giving up roughly a little over 100 yards in a TD, about 130 all-purpose yards in a TD, so this is a good matchup for the kid. So, fireworks galore Thursday night, baby.
Chicago at Cleveland. Anybody on Cleveland? The Bears are kind of a known quantity. Cutler's back.
Josh Gordon, and you could even work in Jordan Cameron. Quite frankly, Jordan Cameron, that game last week was a nice bounce-back game for him. He's been targeted heavily in the offense the last several weeks, but only now is connecting. There's just nobody else on the Browns I would bother to start, even though I do like Jason Campbell. I think he's a fringe guy because the Bears' defense has been struggling. No one's really gone after the Bears in the passing game. For the Bears, whoever the quarterback is, start them. They're a top 5 option this week, or top 7 if you include Peyton Manning and Drew Brees in the conversation. Then you want to start Matt Forte, the wide receivers, and even our buddy Mr. Unicorn, Martellus Bennett.
Mr. Captain Crunch. San Francisco at Tampa Bay. Are the Buccaneers a viable fantasy defense?
No way. I know we had talked about this a little bit.
They're number 1 in the NFC in turnover differential.
I know, but in fantasy, they're just not really doing much. They're, at the beginning of the season, I was sort of high on them because what they did in the secondary, and they already had a great defensive line, but it just hasn't sort of come to fruition this season. So I would sort of stay away from them. For the 49ers, I actually think this is a pretty decent matchup for Colin Kaepernick. He was such a bust during most of the season. He's probably devastated everybody who drafted him. But for some reason, he's on your roster. I mean, he's your best option. He's a guy you can play. You obviously play Frank Gore as an RB2. I think you can get Anquan Bolden in the mix, Vernon Davis, and get Michael Crabtree in as a WR3. I think this is a game he can really do some damage. But again, don't take risks. If you have somebody better, don't start Michael Crabtree just because. I mean, you're playing him because it makes sense to.
I had a question and now it's gone. Oh, if you're in a keeper league, are you stashing Mike Glennon on your roster for next year?
Yeah, if he's on your team right now, he's probably not your number 1 guy. And I think that it makes sense to. If the Buccaneers are going to draft a quarterback, which they probably will, I mean, Glennon will be in the mix. I don't know. He's shown some really good upside. Mm-hmm. And he didn't have the opportunity to come into camp as the player that everyone thought would be the number 1 option in the offense. And then suddenly in mid-season, he gets thrown to the Wolves. They throw him in one game, get some film. He goes into the bye week, looks at the film, suddenly comes out, and he's a good quarterback. I mean, they've won, I think, 3 out of the last 6 games with him under center. Previously, did they even win a game? I don't think so.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think he's worth keeping and seeing play out, because the one thing in the NFL that this season should have made obviously clear to everybody, things can change quickly. Players can come out of nowhere, like Nick Foles. I certainly expected him to be starting at the end of the season, but I didn't expect him to be this good. I mean, that I think is good.
Right.
And that's why I wouldn't necessarily cut him. Is he at the top of my list to keep? No. But is he a player you could keep? Sure.
Okay. Houston at Indianapolis. What's Case Keenum, the Houston offense? Andre Johnson is on my team, and I just don't know what to expect week to week.
Well, I think he is a stud. I looked at his numbers today. He is, I don't know if he's my number one wide receiver on my top 5 list, but he's up there. Since Casey Keenum has been under center, I want to say in every game except one, he's had over 100 yards receiving. I mentioned the 229 yards he had against the Colts just a few weeks ago and 3 TDs. He's 5 TDs since Casey Keenum's under center. I mean, you have him in fantasy, you start him. Just start him.
All right. What about the Colts? Andrew Luck viable?
Like I said, he's sort of one of these coaches' decision, depending who else you have. If you have Andrew Luck and you've been starting him and you're still in the playoffs starting him, I would be stunned, which is why I sort of look at him and go, God, I don't really want to play him. I don't want to take that risk.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't started him for about 4 weeks now.
Okay. I mean, like, for example, I would rather start Joe Flacco this weekend. I think he's in a better matchup against Lions. I'm sorry, who are they playing? They're playing the Lions indoors in Detroit, a very pass-friendly team, than I would with Andrew Luck, just because I get nervous about it. It just gives me the jeebies, I guess. Because there's nobody really, except for Kobe Fleener, that I like in that matchup. And I like Kobe Fleener because the Texans, again, he's one of my top 5 starts this week. And if you come to the website, go to the top starts and go to tight ends, you'll see it. It'll give you exactly how many TDs the Texans have given up to the tight ends in the past 5 games. So everything points to him having at least a decent enough game where he could get you a TD, and I think he makes for a good play. Okay. So, that's sort of, I think, the extent of everything. I mean, Ben Tate, I suppose you could, but wow. To go from a Patriots game where he scores 3 touchdowns to posting slightly better than 50 yards makes absolutely no sense against the Jaguars. Top of it.
All right, New England at Miami.
Tough game to call. Tannehill, I kind of like, but I figure if you're in the playoffs, you're probably not going to play him. I mean, if you're going to, he certainly has played well enough to. I guess as you have a QB1 that you'll be starting in his stead. I don't really like anybody else on the Dolphins, with the exception of what's his name? Matthew Clay.
I want to see. I thought it was Charles Clay.
Charles Clay, thank you. I like Charles Clay. I mean, last week that breakout game was so refreshing to see. I mean, he really has the size and build of sort of a bigger wide receiver. I expect a big game from him this week. I think it's official. He's here, and Tannehill is going to take advantage of him for the Patriots. You obviously can. I think you can play Tom Brady. I think you have to look at it and go, he's the veteran. He's going to do what it takes at this point to win out the season, be in the best place possible. You're going to have to like Shane Vereen. I think it's still risky, but based on what he did last week, why wouldn't the Patriots keep going to him? I think they'd be stupid to sort of take touches away from him after he was so productive. Julian Edelman makes for a good start. I think Danny Amendola is worth WR3 consideration. The other guys I would avoid just because they've been so hot and cold. But to the extent Aaron Dobson or Kimbrell Tompkins plays from a football perspective, they should contribute to this game. And I like the Patriots' defense.
Okay. Redskins at the Falcons.
Wow, this is a great game for everybody involved. Kirk Cousins is sort of a sleeper, but you're at this point you're probably not going to play him. But if let's say you're in a 15 to 17 week playoff period, you might want to pick him up and put him on your bench. If you have one great quarterback but no backup, there'd be no downside to that. This is a great game for Alfred Morris against a porous Falcons rush defense. Pierre Garçon is the player this week that I think potentially could break out because of Kirk Cousins being under center. He's a pocket passer. He's going to throw the ball. And we all know if he can get the ball to Pierre Garçon, he's going to catch it. So I like him. I'm not so sure that I like Jordan Reed. I haven't ultimately decided how I feel about him, so I would check back with me later. For the Falcons, I like Roddy White. I like Harry Douglas. I like Matt Ryan. I think this is an opportunity for him to throw 250 yards and 2 TDs. Tony Gonzalez, he is a top 5 start this week. And outside of that,
what's your feelings on Steven Jackson?
Oh, I'm sorry. I like Steven Jackson. My feelings are this. You have to look at him with all your other guys. All the other players you have to choose from. He's definitely an RB2 to a low-end RB2 this week. I mean, if my RB2 was Alfred Morris, in one of my leagues he is my RB2, I would definitely put Alfred Morris ahead of Steven Jackson. But if in Ryan Matthews, I would play ahead of Steven Jackson. I would probably, if it was Rashard Mendenhall and Steven Jackson, I would sort of lean Mendenhall because of the matchup, but I could see why somebody would rather play Steven Jackson. I would play him ahead of Donald Brown this weekend.
All right. Seahawks at the Giants. Is there anybody on the Giants that's viable fantasy-wise?
I'm not really hot on anybody. I mean, I suppose you could put Victor Cruz in as a wide receiver 3, but they have been so hot and cold.
Think they're regretting that contract?
Pardon me?
Think the Giants are regretting that contract?
Yeah, I don't think that they are. And in fact, if I'm Hakeem next, I might want to. Oh, with Victor Cruz, no. Cruz is the future of that team. Whatever the problem is here stems from that offensive line and Eli Manning and what's going on in his head. Hakeem next, I think it's time for him to move on. Even though, boy, I don't think he's going to land the big contract with anybody after the season they had, because they're just gonna. Every team will hold that over him, so he'll never get the big bucks that he likely deserves. For the Seahawks, Russell Wilson, he's probably not your QB1. If he is, you can play him. But if he's your QB2, your QB1's probably the better play this week, probably. And then Marshawn Lynch, you never bench the guy. I mean, his off games were surprises. They're against teams he shouldn't have had off games, and then he's devastated everybody else that should have shut him down. He's a machine. He is a beast. And I would just keep starting him all day. Doug Baldwin's probably the only one worth a wide receiver 3 option, and everybody else, avoid him. Play the Seahawks defense, by the way.
All right. The Bills at Jacksonville. Anybody?
Whew. I don't think Jones-Drew plays this week. At least that's what it's starting to sound like. I suppose I think it's Jordan Todman becomes sort of a sleeper in the game. But, again, I'd probably avoid him.
What would you say about Jacksonville's defense against Buffalo?
I forget where I have them. I think I have them as sort of a coach's issue. I have a bunch of teams that I have sort of are the top defenses, which are maybe 5, 6, 7 defenses, and then maybe another 6 to 10 that you can sort of pick and choose from, that they seem a little even. And this is just a game that worries me a little bit. I like the Jacksonville Jaguars because they're on a winning streak. I looked at a few of their games, and they're winning by just scoring, and scoring any way possible. I mean, it makes no sense. There's no Chet Henne hitting one receiver and that player having 200 yards receiving and 1 TD like last year. It's 60 yards here, a TD here. Jones-Drew putting up 60, 40, and 1. Just whatever it takes to win the game, and even on defense. And the Bills, they're just a bad road team. I mean, if you count that Toronto game as a road game as opposed to a home game, they're 1-6 or 1-7 on the road, which, it's just one of those things you cannot ignore. I mean, from their side, you C.J. Spiller, Fred Jackson. After that, I think you could play the Bills defense, you could play the Jaguars defense, but I'd rather play the Eagles defense ahead of those guys. In fact, I think the Eagles, it's sort of this defense, if you're in a jam, I mean, an absolute jam. They're not a sleeper. They're not a defense I think will magically become the number 1 defense of the week, but they're a defense that in the past, I don't know if it's 2-3 games, they have, I want to say, 9 sacks, 3 turnovers each game, and I think they've held, it's 2 games, and they've held their opponents to under 20 points scoring per game. That's the kind of number that makes you go, that's a defense that maybe I could roll with if I was in a jam.
All right. Philadelphia at Minnesota.
Well, I like the Eagles. I mean, Nick Foles, LaShawn McCoy, Deshaun Jackson, Riley Cooper is a wide receiver 3. I've already talked about their defense. Heck, I even like Alex Henry as a kicker. It's great. It's an indoor game. On the flip side, boy, I'm kind of looking around and going, unless Adrian Peterson plays, which I'm not sure that that's going to happen. I don't even know that I like Toby Gerhart. I mean, he's definitely worth picking up. But, one of the things nobody was really talked about was that Toby Gerhart got a little dinged up at the end of the last game. I believe it was people have called it a slight aggravation of his hamstring injury. And I'm kind of like, wow, how do you slightly aggravate your hamstring? Yeah. But, if he's practicing, I suppose you have to take it for what it's worth. If you're contending for something and you're worried about Toby Gerhart and you have the bench space, heck, just pick him up and put him on your bench. To that, I know there's been some of the other experts have talked about Cordarrelle Patterson being a potential breakout player. And, I think that's all good and great. But really, if you've made it this far without him, why would you pick him up and risk the possibility that he puts up a goose egg? I just find that to be sort of bad advice. But if you're desperate, then I think he's an option. But I would be troubled if somebody told me they were desperate and they're one of the top 4 teams in their league right now.
Alrighty, Jets at the Panthers. This should be all Panthers, no?
Yeah, absolutely. Even Chris Ivory would be tough to play against with the number 2 defense in the league. And they'd probably be number 1 but for the Saints last week.
Yeah, it took the Saints to make them look human. I mean,
I mean, it's just Panthers. And when I say Panthers, it's going to be Greg Olsen, Cam Newton. I really like Steve Smith this week. I definitely think he's worth playing as a WR3. I think you can consider Brandon LaFell. There's just a lot of things that point to this being a really great passing game for the Panthers. I would avoid D'Angelo Williams even with Jonathan Stewart out. This is the number 2 or number 1 rushing defense. And when I say that, there's no joke about it. I mean, if he gets 80 yards, that would be just, complete luck. If he gets into the touchdown, that's even bigger luck. There's such a thing. So, all Panthers.
Okay. Chiefs at the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs, once they got through those 3 games, 2 of which were against the Broncos, they certainly showed that they still have a great defense, even without Justin Houston in the lineup. I think we're going to see more of the same this weekend. So, you like Jamal Charles. I think Dwayne Bowe could possibly make for a wide receiver 3 again this week in the matchup. Obviously, the Chiefs' defense on the Raiders' side. I don't like Rod Streeter this week because he's going to pull the best coverage. I think next week he could potentially have a better week. Matt McGloin's one of these guys that or one of these players that he'll potentially has a future, and he's got some good ball in him. Just not a week I would rely on him, and I don't think this is necessarily a good game for Rashad Jennings, even though you might consider him for a flex play.
Packers at the Cowboys.
Yeah, all Cowboys, with the exception of their defense. I love DeMarco Murray. He's having a great second half of the season. I like this game for Tony Romo. Des Bryant, Jason Witten is one of my top 5 tight end starts. Nobody else on the Cowboys on the Green Bay side. Jordy Nelson, I suppose you could work as a wide receiver 3. And then after that, everything is sort of hit or miss. Oh, Eddie Lacy, top 5 start if he's healthy. That's the only thing that's holding him back right now is he going to be active? If he's active, I think he could have a field day this week.
Well, now, if he's inactive, would you start Starks?
I would consider it. I mean,
Okay.
the matchup is that good. It's that good.
All right. Saints at the Rams.
All Saints. Zach Stacy is really the only one on the Rams side that you should consider potentially as an RB2 or as a flex play. When I say all Saints, Brees, Graham, Colston. I like Sproles. I like Pierre Thomas in this matchup. And I would avoid everybody else. Well, Saints defense, get them going.
Okay. Cardinals at the Titans.
This is a tough matchup for the Titans all the way across, even though I will say that the Cardinals are not as good on the road. That game against the Eagles certainly showed that.
Is Larry Fitzgerald like a 90% must start? No.
I'm not sure what that even
because all right, my 3 wide receivers on my team were Des Bryant, Larry Fitzgerald, and Andre Johnson. Obviously, I'm not going to bench Andre Johnson or Des Bryant, but I also have Julius Thomas on my bench.
Oh my God!
So I benched Julius Thomas, or I started Julius Thomas and benched Larry Fitzgerald last week. So that's why that's like the 10% exception, I guess is why I said 90% must start.
Oh, I mean, I would. Here, Larry Fitzgerald will definitely play well if the matchup is right, and he will definitely play well if it's a defensive back or a team that has been burned by the big wide receiver play. That would be the situation that I would consider playing him in, or the situations. Otherwise, this week, I might consider benching him, especially if you have Julius Thomas. I mean, this game tomorrow night, should be just a complete shootout.
Right. Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. Game we've already dissected pretty good.
Yeah, I like the Bengals running backs right now, and this kind of goes back to sort of Marv Lewis. I think this is part of his philosophy. As the season progresses, a running back like Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, who's a veteran, who's got a lot of miles on the tires, he's been giving him sort of the time off or some time off during the regular season, and he's starting to play him now. And he's playing him along with Gio Bernard, and he's passing because if you can control the clock, you can win football games, period. And so I like those guys. You obviously play A.J. Green every week. I suppose you could play Dalton this week if you wanted to, but, if you have him, he's probably not your top guy. You probably have a better quarterback that you can start ahead of him. And the Bengals defense, I think they're worth a start this week. For the Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger has been a pleasant surprise, but I don't know that this is the week you want to lean on him. I mean, if you picked him up off waivers because your quarterback situation was in disarray and you've been riding him this far, then you're going to play him because he's got 3 really good wide receivers on the team, all 3 of which could be wide receiver 3s. But that would be so rare, I think, that's probably not the situation. You probably don't need to rely on these guys. Antonio Brown is probably the best of the bunch because it's sort of a guessing game with the other guys, what they're going to do on a week-to-week basis. So, that's sort of where I would be at the end of the road.
All right. Baltimore at Detroit.
Well, I like Matt Stafford, obviously Calvin Johnson. This could be a tough matchup for Reggie Bush. The Ravens do have a very good rush defense. I think they've only given up 3 or 4 rushing TDs on the season, under 100 yards rushing per game. I know he's good as a receiver as well, which is why I would still have him as a player that you start. I mean, if he's not your RB1, probably he's probably your RB2, so you start him. It makes it a little bit more shakier for Joique Bell whether or not to play him. But because this is going to be, this game just reeks of high passing game. You could look at him potentially as a flex play. On the flip side for the Ravens, I already mentioned that Flacco is sort of a sleeper this week. Not a sleeper, but he's a player you could pick up and play if you absolutely needed the help. It's hard for me to see that situation, but you could. You obviously have to look Torrey Smith. He's a top 10 play this week. I was trying. I almost put him in my top 5, and I just found another player that I like slightly because of the amount of yards that the Lions are giving up. Oh, by the way, the Lions here, Matt Stafford, very quickly at home. This guy is ridiculously good. Out of 6 home games, 5 over 300 yards passing, 1 488 yards passing. Out of those 5, 3 of them, he's had multiple TDs. I mean, he's ridiculously good at home, so you start him with confidence. I think he's the number 1 play outside of Peyton Manning or Drew Brees. And for the Ravens, Ray Rice, he's a tough guy to figure. I'm not sure which way I would lean with him. I think at best he's a flex play. RB2, man, I have him on one team, but I'm lucky I have a couple different running backs that I sort of picked up that people discarded during the course of the season, so I don't have to play them. And as long as I can find somebody with a better matchup, I usually start him ahead of Rice.
What's your take on Jacoby Jones?
He's hit or miss, and that's how I treat him. And with hit or miss players, I don't play them. I don't recommend them. I would feel bad, doing that, unless there was something about the matchup that just jumped out at me and said, "Here's a reason why you should play him." In this matchup, it is favorable, but it's not enough for me to say you should put him in because maybe it's Marlon Brown that has a great game. Oh, Dennis Pitta. This is not a great matchup for the tight end position in general. But Pitt is so much a wide receiver on this team that I think he can play him this week.
All right. There you have it, folks. Everything you want to know about Week 15, but we're afraid to ask because you didn't call in. But it's okay. You got another chance next week. Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. For Keith Grieve, for Steve Taylor, Jim Saranteas, I'm Keith Grieve. Thanks for listening, folks. 87 Live.
Post-game show is brought to you by Christ, I can't find it. The hell with it.